can't get on. Great. Hi, David and Kelly. Thank you for coming early.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you just fine, buddy. I can't see you though.
Okay, hold on. Let me see this.
It's in the bottom left.
There you go.
There you go, buddy.
How you doing, bro?
Great. Hold on a second. I got Stephanie Kent.
How's your leg, bro?
My back is bad, man. I had to go to the emergency room again today.
Oh, man. I know mine's bad, too. I don't know what I'm going to do. I was telling Kelly, if I don't do something by Monday, I got to go, too, because I can't take it.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, there's Mike. I really appreciate you doing this for me.
Hey, we'll try, I mean.
Well, here's my thought, this is just the first one. Then I want to do one for Brevard County. In other words, I want to keep trying to do this to bring people from the outside so the coalitions can't keep, singing their tune. Hey, Mike.
Hello.
How are you today, man?
I am doing wonderful. How are you?
Look at that beard, bro.
The Corona beard is in full.
The Corona beard is in force.
I am telling you what. I just got off the golf course. No, not really.
Awesome.
I went from the couch over to my desk, but
I hear you.
I'm a wild one on Saturday.
Hey, meet David Long.
Hey, David Long.
How you doing, Mike? Good seeing you.
Doing well.
Mike, he does outreach down south of me in Indian River County.
Alrighty. Cool beans. Just straight up, just homeless outreach and things like that. Is that
Well,
what
actually, we do the whole Treasure Coast, part of Okeechobee, and actually some southern parts of Brevard that probably Tom don't get into, like up around Miko and that.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Here you go. Here's my wife. Come on, Kelly. Hold on. But yeah, we've been doing this for about 35 years, I guess.
Oh, so you're new at it.
Yeah, they are fairly new, Mike. No, I'm the newbie here.
Can you see her?
Just
Okay.
Dave's fussing over me.
So it's David and Kelly, correct? Is that what I'm looking at? Hi, guys. I'm a little new to all this fancy technology.
Yeah, I'm kind of new to Zoom stuff too. We're like the face-to-face type thing, but I guess this will work.
Well, it's kind of hard to get all of us to South Bend, though. Hi, Megan. Thank you for joining us. So we're way early. We're still 10 minutes away, but I have to tell you that I'm hoping that we can increase the number of panelists and do this in more than just this community. That this is kind of my little pilot. Mike, I just keep throwing stuff against the wall till it sticks, right?
Eventually. One of these days.
Well, I have to, you want me to brag a little?
Yeah, I can.
No. Tom, it's you.
Well, I never brag. I brag all the time. No, but I'll just say this. Okay, Mike, truly, it's been a rough road, but 4 years ago, nobody even talked about homelessness in Palm Bay pretty much. There were two groups that were really outreaching. That was Dave and Kelly and NVHS originally. But there was zero talk in the county government or city government or anything. And we've gotten a cold night shelter put together now. We have a feeding program. with Bay West Church. We have a homeless task force that's been appointed by the city that has actual stakeholders like the Chamber of Commerce. And, oh my gosh. Dear.
He
Mine's
smells my dog.
outside.
He smells my dog. The old mutant of the dog.
So now we got everybody barking. But what I was saying is, you know, and we have like the Chamber of Commerce on there. We have, just give me a second. I can't think why he's barking. Better now than when it starts. I didn't know that. Sorry. I didn't know that. Please leave him out there.
No, I recall the whole thing with the cold weather shelter and everything like that. 2016, harpening back. I think that's about, we first met each other, wasn't it?
I hear you.
2015, 2016, back in the good old days. Hello, Keith. I'm Mike Cornell.
Oh, hi, Mike.
I was going to introduce you guys.
Oh, okay.
Mike, Keith is one of the folks in Melbourne, Florida, which is the city just a little north of me. He started an organization called Steady Town, and they're building affordable housing in Melbourne. And he has a really exciting project. I'll let him tell you about it. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, well, Tom, thanks for having me. Mike, it's nice to meet you. So I'm talking to you from Florida, and you're in South Bend, Indiana. Is that correct?
That would be incorrect. I'm up here in DeLand.
Mike's in DeLand. None of the guests have really joined us yet. This is folks that are on the panel. We have about 6 more minutes, so we were kind of just shooting the breeze.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, see if that's better. Sit down. I'll sit on that side, you sit on this side.
So Mike, Tom mentioned, my foundation is called Steady Town. I like to think of myself as an organizer for community development projects in my community in Brevard County. And, you know, I live in Melbourne, so I focus a lot in the south part of Brevard County. If you're familiar, it's a rather long county, so a lot of ground to cover. Right? So, but yeah, I've been blessed to be involved in this project that's building 108 units of affordable and supportive housing. That should make a
without that, it's all just whistling Dixie.
Yeah, that's right. You need housing first. Yeah, absolutely. So it's nice to meet you.
You too.
And you're not too far away.
I never am.
I
was down y'all's way. We went down to go, me and the grandson, down to see that. We got family on Titusville right across the water. So you look out and there's the launch pad or whatever. So yeah, watching that rocket go up, that was pretty cool.
Beautiful area.
Yeah.
So Mike and I, the reason we know each other so well, Keith, is when we had the huge encampment in Daytona Beach, Mike was the SSVF coordinator at the Salvation Army at the time. And what he did is he took all of those folks off the street. You know, they cooperated with the Daytona Beach Police, and they moved them all into the gym of the Salvation Army into a bridge bed program. And I don't know why I'm doing any talking. You should be telling about it, Mike.
Well, that's essentially true.
Yeah. So he had some amazing success, 200 and how many?
38.
238 in 12 months with about 200.
6 months.
6 months with $200,000 in funding.
220 was the total budget for everything for the 6 months. Yeah.
That's good impact. So you were able to help those folks get off the street into some area, and then you could help them from there get permanent housing. Yeah,
I had as the SSVF program director when I came on in 2014. You know, everybody was supposed to end veterans homelessness. So we had wound up getting the surge funding because everything they were doing prior to that just wasn't working. It just was not having an effect. 2007, you know, Obama just was the push and nobody was doing it. So I said, well, let me try it in Daytona. If you're gonna try it anywhere, let's try to go up there. So between March and November of 2015, we redid the way you do that. And we were actually the first 2 counties, Volusia and Flagler up here, to actually be certified in effectively ending homelessness among our veterans in November 11, 2015. Few months later, they decided to have this homeless encampment right there on the county property, coming and going, probably a good 300 or 400 in and out, in and out. And I came on board January 13th, 2016, because they decided, hey, well, let's get everybody together that does this for a living and see if we can come up with any ideas. And it was right before Bike Week, right before Speed Weeks, and it was right off of Beach Street, which is the Rodeo Drive of Daytona. So they were kind of motivated.
Yeah.
2.5 weeks later, we opened the doors.
All right. Great. A few other folks coming in.
I tell you, you guys are lucky up in those other counties in different states and that down at Treasure Coast, they don't even have a homeless shelter.
Oh, we didn't have one either. It was created.
Yeah, but I mean, we've been trying to get one for years and years, and they just, they said, well, we don't have a problem here.
Yeah.
That's their attitude.
No one ever does.
Indian River? You're in Indian River or Martin County or St. Lucie?
Treasure Coast, Indian River, Martin County, on what would that be, the eastern edge of Okeechobee, and a little bit up into Brevard, just north of the Indian River County line.
Mm-hmm.
So we've, let's see, there's about 1,400, almost 1,500 homeless from the pit count of January here in these counties on the Treasure Coast. So
has it gone up, gone down?
It's
Anything?
going down increasingly.
yeah, it's gone down.
So I'm going to start promptly at 6:05, but, I want to give everybody a chance to get in here. I have had many requests from the community for a tape of this meeting, so I am recording this in case anybody didn't realize that, because they'd really like to see it. And so we'll start promptly at 6:05, and just to give you a quick rundown of what I have on my agenda here, I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves for 1 minute, basically just an overview of what people should ask you about. I have about 15 questions that have been submitted by different community members. And so I'm going to fire those at you, and please try to respond in a 2 to 3 minute time frame if you can. Once we finish all the questions, if we still have time left over, what I intend to do is take any questions that I get in the chat. And if not, and if we don't have questions in the chat, I have some questions that I made up that I'll let everybody know that I made up before we ask them, just so that we fill the entire hour if we can. And honestly, I only count 2 people besides our panelists, and we're missing quite a few folks. Both my law enforcement folks aren't here. Well, there's lots of people down here.
Is Dan one of them?
Yeah, Dan is,
Oh, yeah.
Dan is supposed to be here, and Dan is the Zoom freak. So and because we all got in and nobody's blowing up my phone, I assume it's, not a problem with the link or something. So.
I think me, you, and him, Orlando, didn't we have dinner or something one night?
Yeah, we did one night. I still have those pictures, actually, Mike. And welcome very much to the conversation. We're going to start promptly at 6:05. We're basically just giving more folks time to get here.
Hey, Tom,
Evening.
do you invite anybody from UPS or any of those other organizations?
No, I didn't get anybody in Indian River. I invited everybody in Brevard and everybody in South Bend.
Okay, I got you.
How did you hear about this? Had they reached out again to you, Tom? Or I know,
Well,
are you just keeping up with some people over there? Or?
No, honestly, I had pretty much moved on from South Bend from my last trip, but when they got this major encampment in the Monroe district, what happened was is they had a homeless encampment formed downtown that they went ahead and dispersed pretty quickly. And once they did, those campers all ended up at Dulos Chapel, which is inside of a neighborhood, because the pastor there said, "You can come stay on my property."
Oh, boy.
And
Wow.
so once all that happened, basically my phone was on for 3 days. I must have got 40 phone calls in 3 days. You know, everybody, because I met literally, I did 8 days of workshops up there. So I met everybody in every area of South Bend. You know, I met the downtown businesses, I met every service provider, all the police, both sheriff and South Bend PD. I mean, you know the whole gamut. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, I remember we talked about it.
So yeah, it's because my phone blew up, and then one of the advocates asked me, hey, how do we get you involved? And I'm like, well, we'll do this. We came up with this idea, and I thought this would be a good pilot to maybe do in some other areas. So we'll be starting in approximately 1 minute. I'm going to start promptly at 6:05. And those of you that have joined us, thank you very much. Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Tom Redmond, and I'll be the moderator this evening, a community conversation on homelessness in South Bend, Indiana. I want it very clear to everybody that's here on the call and everybody that were to see this in the future, that the purpose of this call is only to educate the community. The experts or the people that are specialists that you see on your screen that have been nice enough to give us their time free are here to give you their opinion, and every expert's opinion is their own opinion. None of us have any vested interest in South Bend. So, and we are experts in our particular field, and you'll know which fields in just a moment as we go through the introductions. I'd like to ask everybody today, please, to refrain from naming any particular agency or people. We're not here to in any way try to solve this problem. That's not the purpose of this call. The purpose of this call is to provide information to the community so that the community can take that information back and find the vehicle they need to have a solution. We're going to start tonight by introducing our panelists. I'll start with Mr. Michael Cornell. Each panelist is going to introduce themselves for 1 minute, and then we'll get started on the questions. Mike?
How you doing? Yeah, my name's Mike Cornell, speaking to you from DeLand, Florida, which is about 20 miles west or so of Daytona Beach, Florida. I've lived over here for about 10 years. I was the communication and outreach director for Volusia and Flagler County with the Coalition for the Homeless up here. Became the supportive services for veteran and families funded through the VA, became their program coordinator in 2014. 2015, we effectively pretty quickly effectively ended veterans homelessness in Volusia and Flagler. We're the first 2 counties in Florida to do that. Then we had our own homeless encampment at the December of 2015 popped up out of nowhere on county property in the middle of downtown Rodeo Drive in Daytona Beach, Florida, right before Bike Week. So needless to say, the powers that be, both elected and business for good reason, were a little bit upset about that. So they got everybody together and they said, well, Mike and the gang, they just did the veterans homelessness. Do you have any ideas? And maybe 2.5 weeks later, we created what we call the Bridge Bed Program. That effectively on that Friday, I remember it well, in 4.5 hours, we were able to get 103 people off that wall into a roof over their head that night, had an 86 bed, we call it a housing program and a shelter. 6 months later, all the different stats, all of that stuff like that, but Crime, nuisance crime was reduced 71%, saved the city $116,000. The budget was $220,000. 238 people became permanently housed off the dole. About 96% or so were still there 3 months later in their own places. It became pretty successful. We were happy what we did it, and kind of moved on from there. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. Happy to be here. Hope I can help. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Next, I'd like to introduce Keith Donald. Keith Donald is a housing specialist, and I'd like to, let me mute somebody here. Hold on a second. I apologize. I'm not too technically proficient at this. Mary Ann, could you mute yourself, please? Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Keith Donald. Keith is the founder of Steadytown, which is an organization in Melbourne, Florida. And Keith, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you having me. It's a pleasure to be with you all this evening. As Tom mentioned, my name is Keith Donald. I'm the founder of Steadytown. That's my a private foundation that's here in Melbourne, Florida, that focuses on issues of community development. And I've been doing this for about 6-7 years or so, focusing on how to bring different sectors together to help address homelessness here in Melbourne, but also expand the supply of affordable housing in our community. I think the expertise that I bring is working with different partners from different sectors, whether that's our local housing authorities, our local municipalities, or with our state housing finance agency to try to bring resources together that are targeted to ending homelessness here in Melbourne. So I'm happy to answer any questions related to that. And thank you for having me.
Well, thanks so much, Keith. And next, I'd like to introduce Eric Tars. Eric is from the National Law Center on Poverty and Homelessness, and he does a lot of work on the Hill, and he's very, very familiar with not just the legal aspects of homelessness, but the COVID aspects, because he's been very heavily involved. Go ahead, Eric.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having us. So yeah, I'm the legal director at the National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty. I've been here for 14 years now, but my home base is in Philadelphia. And as Tom said, my work kind of spans the gamut between policy, advocacy, research and writing, and litigation. I've been involved in the Martin versus Boise case, which went up to the Supreme Court this last year, which found that it's cruel and unusual punishment to criminally punish people for doing basic life-sustaining activity like sleeping, sheltering themselves in the absence of adequate alternatives. Right now we are, as Tom said, doing a lot of work around COVID. We worked with the CDC, and they have issued guidance that notes that it's actually not safe to remove encampments in the middle of a pandemic and mix people up, put them into a congregate shelter facility potentially that would be less safe than where they are right now. And so what you're supposed to do is either get them into individual housing units or get them into, provide them with sanitation services where they are. So that's the beginning of my stuff, and I'll happily talk more later.
Thanks so much, Eric. Next is David and Kelly Long. David and Kelly Long are from Indian River County. They're Angels of Hope Ministries is their organization, and they have extensive experience with street outreach, 25 years. David and Kelly, could you introduce yourselves?
Okay.
Hi, yeah, I'm Dave Long. I'm the executive director of Angels Hope. This is Kelly Long. She's the director too. And yeah, we've been doing actually 35 years. But
I was wrong. Sorry, David.
Yeah, that's okay. We do the whole Treasure Coast. We do Indian River County, St. Lucie County, and Martin County.
And we do South Brevard.
Yeah, South Brevard, like Mako, just a little bit north of Sebastian line here, we go ahead.
Well, we actually run two nonprofits, Tom. I don't know if you knew that or not, but we have Angels at Work. that works with homeless felons and homeless, and we have Angels of Hope. And like David said, we have 35 years of experience with the COVID-19, what we did. And I think we were the only one on the Treasure Coast that was doing shelter in place, food and supply boxes, taking out masks, taking out sanitizer, items for them to wash. And we do have the first ever Treasure Coast mobile shower. Unfortunately, we weren't able to use them because the city and the county said it wasn't safe for us to give somebody a bath. Can you imagine that? So yeah, and hey, thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here.
Thank you, guys. And last but not least, Officer Dan McDonald. Dan is a specialist in CIT procedures for law enforcement. He's a longtime Tampa Police Department officer. And Dan, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hey everyone, Dan McDonald in Tampa, Florida, actually in Charlotte County right now. Yeah, I do police homeless outreach. Been doing that full time for 8 years, so I spent about 16,000 hours figuring out what works and what doesn't work. Basically, the police are most of the time they're trying to arrest away the homelessness. It's not going to work. That is just trying to address the symptom. And Eric, I know. Yeah, if you have a bad homeless plan and you're just trying to arrest away the problem or try and criminalize homelessness, you probably get a visit from Eric or the National Law Center or Southern Legal Counsel. I was nice enough to be a guest at their Right to Housing Forum last year. So basically, it's all about looking at solutions rather than addressing the symptoms. And for the people who have absolutely zero compassion about homelessness or mental illness, then I present in terms of economic terms, which is sending homelessness is a very good return on investment. I've got a whole presentation on the economics of homelessness. And police officers like myself and Stephanie, I've estimated our return on investment is about 3 to 1. So the largest amount of money I've recovered for any one client is $500,000, usually less than that. But it's very cost effective what we do. So hopefully that was the Reader's Digest version. That was good enough. Hopefully, Tom.
That was great, Daniel. Thank you so much. And finally, my name is Tom Redman, and I've been involved in homelessness for about 5 years. I'm just going to tell you about my community here in Palm Bay, Florida. When I started working on homelessness here 3 years ago, we had absolutely no services in our community whatsoever. And since then, we've been able to community fund completely a cold night shelter that's open on any night the temperature is below 45 degrees. We have established a camp feeding program where all 37 of our homeless camps get fed every single day. And that doesn't mean we visit them every day, but we give them enough food for every day, and we see them 3 to 5 times a week. So we established that through one of the churches here in our local community, and that was all community done. We just recently established, the city of Palm Bay, our city government established a task force on homelessness, which includes all the important stakeholders such as the Chamber of Commerce, people from Rotary, people from the service organizations, et cetera, and that is now well underway. And so what I specialize in is trying to find ways to take care of the low-hanging fruit in your community, immediately trying to reduce as many people as possible, because really, we'll get into it a little bit later, there are some folks that are not severely challenging. They just don't fit into some of the service silos. And that's kind of what I specialize in, is trying to take care of getting people off the street because there's just not enough available housing and there's not enough available programs. And I try to do it without those things. So I'm kind of a specialist at that. So next, what I would like to do is I have literally questions from the community. And there were about 9 of them that they did not indicate who they wanted to answer them. So I'll let any one of you raise your hand that would like to answer the question. And we'll just move through these first 9 questions that weren't directed straight to people. The first question is It seems South Bend needs to get all the advocates and politicians in a room and have a good conversation about homelessness, causes and solutions. Any ideas on how to get this happen in our community? Anybody want to take that one? All right, I will.
Or I will, one or the other.
Go ahead, Mike. I'd rather go ahead.
That was one thing we did, and ask. And I know that seems kind of odd. We had a lady that was on the City Council of Daytona. Everyone knew that this was a problem and all, so they would have all this. So if you got to get elected officials, if you get somebody that knows business, get a big business person there, because they're going to want to go. There's a lot of good people. Get your faith groups together. Say, hey, look, on Friday at 3:30, city council person, county council, just ask and tell them we want to do this for your church. Get all the people that have been there, done that in your community. They know it. And if you want to, they can, it's not that hard. Just coffee and donuts. They'll be there. Trust me. Sorry, Dan. But so,
No, it's true. We love donuts. Cops love donuts.
There you go. But yeah, just have to ask and have to get them together. And trust me, in 13 days, we created this program simply because we asked and everybody got together. We figured it out, brainstorming, and it was done.
Well, I'm going to answer this because basically I was invited there. Mr. Kevin Smith's actually on the call with us. And truly, what you just said was exactly correct. Mr. Smith convened every single person in the community of South Bend, and we had amazing conversations. It seems like everything was moving in a great direction. So to answer that question, the truth is you just need somebody spearheading it. Does anybody else have anything they want to add before we move on with that? Go ahead, Eric.
I'll just add that when you're inviting all those people, it's really essential to not just invite the advocates, not just invite the service providers, not just invite the politicians, but invite the people who are directly experiencing homelessness, because any solution that's going to work has to work for them. And if they are part of the solution, part of creating the solution, then it's going to create buy-in, so that even if it's not the thing that they would have ideally wanted at the beginning, if they were part of participating in developing it, it'll help those individuals sell it to the other people in their encampment and say we didn't get everything, but we got what we needed. But if they're excluded and they see this as something that's being imposed and something that works for the rest of the community but not for them, it's not going to work. So
I would agree with all of that. Anybody else have anything to add? Great. The next question is, what do other cities do with addicts who get kicked out of homeless shelters and don't want treatment?
Oh boy.
Well, there's a lot of that out there. A lot of the homeless.
They revolve in and out of jail, so we have a program called Target, Resolve, and Support. If you don't target what the problem is, they're going to be in and out of jail. We have New Horizons down here, and a lot of the addicts, they'll go in and out, and finally they just get tired. And if you don't, we don't have a lot of resources down here on the Treasure Coast like y'all do up in Brevard County. So if you don't target why, all of us would admit that we have a lot of mental illness and people like to self-medicate. So you have to get to why they're self-medicating, and if you can somehow gain their trust. And this is why it's so important for David and I to be out every day. We go out almost every day to get that trust, to interact with the people. And, we've had we have a veteran right now that medicates, and I don't know how long we've been working with him, but he's been homeless for
Since 2008.
Since 2008. And I'll tell you, we're finally getting to the root of his problem. And I don't know if people don't want to take the time or they don't have the time. I'm just grateful that Dave and I do have the time and we're able to get to the root of the problem and then put some kind of resolution in. And the most important thing is, once you go through those steps, you have to have a support system. If you don't have a support system, I've been doing this almost 35 years. If you don't put that support system in, they will fail. That's just my opinion. That's what works for us.
And I'd like to add a little bit to that too, because what members of the public don't understand is There are a lot of times people refuse treatment because of the rules that there are at the shelter and I'll just simply say there's a difference between having a low barrier shelter that has an empathetic feel and that people will stay there. Whereas when it's really punitive and people are treated and I don't mean giving them rules. I'm talking about you're not allowed to smoke and, you have to do that. The thing about it is that if they're not treated empathetically, just like David and Kelly said, the relationship part is the most important part of helping somebody out of homelessness. That's what they're missing, is somebody to help them. And so if it starts off in a punitive fashion and the rules are set up to where they're pretty much going to fail, usually people don't want to go back to those places. The next question I have is, how do we help smartly? We created the current tent city by trying to be helpful, giving addicts free tents, having cookouts for them, giving free supplies, etc. Would our efforts have been better spent in a different direction?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I'd like to try to tackle that one.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, God. So we started a new program where we relocate people because on the Treasure Coast here, our housing, there is no affordable housing and we don't have a shelter. So when you're and a lot of people, and I know this, and I don't mean this to, hurt anybody's feelings, but there is a lot of giveaways out there. People just like to hand.
A lot of enabling.
Yeah, a lot of enabling out there and hand things out. And that's wonderful. I mean, you have to get on a relationship base with these people. But in essence, if you're going to be out there, I feel like you should be searching, as hard as it is, search for a solution. And sometimes it's just as easy. I don't know what you guys encounter, but what Dave and I encounter is a lot of these people do not have family. They have nobody, okay? So we become like their proxy family. So once we find out, that they trust us, and then we can move forward. But I think part of the problem with, like a lot of the handouts is it enables people to stay homeless. And really, and it goes back to targeting why you should try to find out why people are homeless. And a lot of times, down here, I don't know about your statistics up there, but our elderly homeless down here, oh my gosh, when we did our numbers, I think for last month, we did, what was it,
1,088.
1,088 people. And out of those 1,088 people, 702 of them were over the age of 65. So that's a housing problem right there. So we like to try to relocate people back to their family. That's something that we can do. The housing shortage, affordable housing, that's tough. That's really tough.
Yeah,
I'd like to, I'm sorry, who is speaking? Is that you, Mike? Go ahead.
This is Eric.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Eric.
I was going to reframe. I don't think that, people are enabling people to be homeless. I think people are homeless and, are being enabled to live, but unless, the question was kind of, should we have put our efforts in a different direction? And, I think the answer is that if you're putting your efforts into creating an encampment as a temporary solution, that can be a good thing. But when you go in, you got to assume this is a temporary thing. Unless as you are doing that, you are creating the exits into housing, then it's going to become a permanent thing. And then you haven't, you might have created a slightly safer place for people to be, but you aren't solving the problem. And so, if our organization has had an evolution on this. For a long time, we and, the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, the kind of official line was, tents aren't housing, people deserve housing, so put all your efforts into housing. But I was talking with a district attorney in Portland, Oregon, who said, there are so many people out there and there are more people going into homelessness than coming out. So even when we're getting people into housing, if we're not making a visible reduction, it's going to cause a backlash, and people are going to say, no, we've tried housing and that didn't work, so therefore let's go back to criminalizing them, which has never worked, but it's what people always go back to. And so if you're getting them into an encampment, allows them to have some order, have sanitation. So people complain about the urination and defecation. Well, give them a porta potty, and then you don't have that problem. People complain about the trash. Give them a dumpster, then you don't have that problem. And so often, if you create this encampment and create a little bit of order, get the visible homelessness off of other streets, you can have that visible improvement, and that will allow you the momentum to make the permanent changes that you need to make in order to get people into housing. But you got to go in saying this is only a temporary thing, and ultimately we need to make sure that every person in this encampment is going to be placed into housing. And the way you do that is, as David and Kelly were saying, you got to build those relationships, know everybody by name, and the 100,000 Homes campaign housed 100,000 of the most chronically homeless, resistant to service people experiencing homelessness all across the country. By doing just that, they figured out what their barriers to going in were, and then when it wasn't just a matter of let's put out some rooms and see and try to put people into them, but when David, a veteran who has PTSD and can't go into a congregate shelter because he feels like boxed in, when an individual room comes up, they say, let's not just put anybody in there, let's put David in there, and then that solves David's homelessness permanently, rather than forcing him into a shelter that's not going to work, and then he's back out on the street. So that's how you got to approach this thing.
And I want to add one thing. We're kind of getting into my bailiwick, which is street outreach, and Dave and Kelly's bailiwick. We were talking quickly about what's enabling. Well, let me just say this is what I tell the folks, my outreach workers, and what I practice. If you're just handing stuff out, you're enabling. I mean, you just are. But here's the thing. These things that we hand out, those are tools to build that relationship. You need to know these people. And I'll tell you, there's people that I've been on the streets with 2 and 3 years. I've been building a relationship with them. And I'm just now finding out what their true barriers are to get them out of homelessness, trauma in their childhood. And I could go on and on. But my point is about the enabling part. If all you're doing is just going and basically handing stuff out and doing it on a one-time or non-recurring basis, that's not really helping them, because what they really need, the reason they're on the streets is because they've burned all their relationships and they don't have family and they don't have people that'll help guide them. And what they need more than anything else is a friend. All right, next. The next question is, what other cities have tent cities that are modeled successfully? What role did the city take in those? Is anybody aware of a successful tent city, David?
No.
Did I see? Oh, I saw you raise your hand.
We don't get any help down here.
Yeah.
The city doesn't think we have a problem, so.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm just shaking, just like, wow.
We're frustrated.
Yeah.
I mean, we're one-on-one. If we can get one person out at a time, that's what we do. So.
Well,
I mean, we've dismantled our own tent cities, just so you know that. And what we find is, I'm glad you brought this up, what we find is, if you have a congregation, right, and I hate to say it like this, but I'm just gonna say it. If you start picking them off one by one and getting them off the street, by the time you get down to 2 or 3, they don't wanna be there anymore. They're like, well, if you did that for him, I can get off the street. So sometimes we've picked off our own little tent cities.
Yeah, especially, like the Route 60 corridor down there. And
Route 60 on Vero, there was like 2 tent cities down there that we just one by one took them off. And we find that the homeless do like to congregate. You're talking about tent cities, and we find that if we could just find that first person, work with them, and then get to whoever they were living by or staying with, then get that person, and you just go one by one by one. But I don't have a lot of help or resources down here. So we kind of just go on an individual basis. And so that's my answer to that one.
Eric, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, sure. And if others want to speak, I've been speaking a lot, so I'm happy to defer. But we did put out a report 2 years ago called Tent City USA, where we do case studies of encampments all across the country and look at some how they were successfully resolved, meaning everybody went into housing as opposed to just being dispersed and popping up in another encampment like happened here in South Bend. And we created a series of principles of how you can successfully deal with encampments, and that could either be by dispersing people back, into housing, getting everybody in that encampment into housing, or by creating some sort of institutionalized encampment, legalizing it in some way. And there's a couple of examples in the report of where that was successfully done. And what we found there is that again, the first principle of that is it's got to be temporary. You have your eye on the prize is eventually this is going to close. Otherwise, you're just creating like a permanent shantytown. And if you do it in that way and you emphasize to a community, look, we need to have this here for 6 months, but we're going to work to get people into housing, then that can reduce some of the not in my backyard kind of attitude to, I don't want to have this encampment legalized here. But if you can say, look, we're going to do it, but it won't be here forever, then that can help to reduce that resistance. Having the input of the people who are living in the encampment throughout the process, many of them, we found the most successful thing is to have them be self-governing, because then it's the individuals regulating their own encampment as opposed to kind of this top-down thing where people are going to be resistant to an authority figure. And having a lot of services co-located with the encampment is important so that people can take their showers, do their laundry, get those things to the people, and that'll make, give them the sense of stability that they need in order to be able to move on. And I think, having that stability is one of the most important things. Like if somebody is nervous about their tent getting, taken away by the cops every day, that prevents them from going out, applying for jobs, going out, applying for services and things that could get them off the streets. But if you just say, we're going to make sure that your belongings are secure here for the next 6 months or however long you need, and then they have the freedom to be able to work on those higher order needs. But check out our report, and that's got all the principles and the case studies in there.
Dan, I'll be right with you. 2 seconds. I want to talk about one quick thing that Eric prompted me on that every city fails to do, mitigating NIMBY. And let me explain that a minute. One of the things we did when we started this project in South Bend, when I was first invited there, is Mr. Kevin Smith's group created the Renaissance District Homeless Group. And one thing they were very good at, because I warned them about it, was what you really need to do is, let's say, for example, you want to open a bridge bed program in the old Salvation Army downtown. That shouldn't be announced. You need to go meet with the folks that are the residents around there, talk to the, the business residents, the people that are going to be major affected, and you have to talk to them and find out what their concerns are and try to mitigate some of those things before the announcement is made. So my point just simply is a lot of communities forget to mitigate the NIMBY effect. That's the other great thing about scattered site too, whether we're talking about scattered site in hotels during COVID, or we're talking scattered site housing, not congregating all the homeless in one spot, also really mitigates the NIMBY effect. Dan, did you have something?
Yeah, just add about the tent city. We had one in Tampa for about 2 months, maybe a little longer. It ran pretty well. It's expensive though. It was about $120,000 for the first month. I'm not sure what it was after that. The city paid for that. Most of them were moved into the COVID funded motel rooms the other tent city that your organization runs in Pinellas County. So not a bad idea, but it was good. It was good solution to get a lot of people off the street very quickly, but always got to keep the eye on the prize, like housing, and not have it stay open forever.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that as well. An example that I'm familiar with here in Florida that has, I believe, implemented a lot of the principles that Eric talked about is in Alachua County with Grace Marketplace. Tom, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but
Yes, I am.
they have this sanctioned encampment, but it's co-located within their campus, and it takes care of all those principles. Where first thing, it's temporary. There's like an end date where they expect to close it. And the focus there is helping those folks find permanent housing, permanent solutions in the community, and eventually they're going to, assist having it. But it plays an important temporary role. And so if they are considering having that in South Bend, the folks at Grace Marketplace in Gainesville, I think could be of help with having that experience, that prior experience on that.
I will also say to everybody that's on the call, I know all of the panelists very well. If you need any reference or you need anybody's phone number, any of that, feel free to, I'll have my email address and phone number. I will guide you to the right people, because again, this is all about giving the community the education on homelessness they need to fix the issue. Next, we're gonna go to Mr. Cornell, because this question has to be for you. What is a bridge bed program?
Well, it goes by a whole bunch of other names. It's not a shelter program. I'm just see that mindset of shelter. People think we did a housing program that happened to be in the gym of the Salvation Army shelter. And it was that mindset. I'm not a first come, first served shelter guy. I don't think that works. The way we did it with them is we had to find out where they were, who they were, what do they need, how do we get it to them? So with those people, what we said is, that is your bed. That is, you don't have to come here at 5 o'clock and stand in line. That is your bed. That is your home. You protect your home. You clean your home. And you know what's funny? We didn't even have to tell them that. They self-regulated themselves. If somebody was doing something funny, they said, no, we don't do that here. They cleaned up after themselves, and all of a sudden had this pride that this is my home. And the way we designed that is we did surveys of homeless people and said, what do you need? Where do you want it? How's it going to go? What do you? And so we designed it from that. Don't put in those silly things. So the bridge bed, all that was is we designed it. We always design any program I've done. We start at the back door, not at the front door. So the back door was get somebody permanently housed off the public dime. So how do we do that? Then we designed a way to do that. Well, a lot of these know each other. Oh, you get a check for $800 a month. You get a check for $800 a month. You guys have been buddies for 20 years. Maybe we can help you get someplace you can be together. They loved it. We created a homeowner doing that. So you get that, like you said, low-hanging fruit or whatever, but they're friends. You got to know them. You got to ask them what they want. From there, if you just continue throughout your community, we had 103 people that night, 238 or so. We had 500 different people that went through that program. We did SPDATs and housing assessments on 890 people. And it wasn't just in that shelter. It was because, that's their bed, that's their home. They liked their home. So the bridge bed was really just a gateway that went from street, how do you deal with an encampment? This is your home, that's the bridge. That bridge is going to take you somewhere, and you give them the power. We all believe in them. That's why we do this.
Yeah.
You got to get them to believe in themselves. So that's what the bridge is. It was a coordination with the city of Daytona and us. And they said, tell us what you need. How are you going to do it? We created it. We asked them. We did that. From there, the eye was always, we're going to start with housing, and we're going to get you there. And it wound up being successful.
Awesome, Mike. I'm going to say this for the South Bend community, because basically here's the selling point, and here's the synopsis of what Mike did there. For about $240,000 over the course of 6 months, he housed 246 people. Okay. And here's the thing, Daytona Beach Police Department says he saved them $140,000 just in police interactions and arrests. So the sum total cost was around $100,000 for 6 months and 240 people to get off of the community rolls. So if that does not sell you, and then let me tell you where the funding came from. The city gave $100,000 and the downtown business people gave $100,000. That's where the 200, I don't know where the last 40 came from. Where'd that come from, Mike?
Actually, from the faith community.
Okay.
They say we like that, yeah.
The point just simply is, how many millions of dollars do we spend operating some things in our community? And look what we could do with a bridge bed program. I'm not going to try to sell it anymore.
And we were literally a block and a half from the downtown business community. That's where our shelter was. And
I'm going to ask you a couple other questions that I know the answer to while we're talking about this, Mike. Would I be wrong if I said people that have been drinking for 16 or 18 years honestly stopped on their own and then begged to get treatment?
Yeah, I love that when I heard about the mental health and the addicts and everything. Their thinkers are broken. We can't put our rationale on them, you know. And so when we do that, no, they're not going to come to you like that. You got to get to be where they are. Sometimes that means logistically. You know, people that know me know my personal story. I lived on the streets for 14 years, Joe. You know, I was a drug addict and a drunk and just, you know, lived off a, you know, criminal, all that other stuff like that. It took one person that said, I just like you. If I can help you, you have to be there. All of a sudden, 17 years later, here I am running big programs and I'm on Zoom. You know, you can do it. That person I see every single day. But please do not ask a homeless person that's a drug addict and drunk to show up at 7:30 to come get your medication and sign up for this. That ain't the way it is. Just be there. They're drunk. How many homed people do we know in our lives or have family members that are drug addicts and drunks? They just happen to have a house.
Well, I submit to you, there's a heck of a lot more housed drunks and drug addicts than there are homeless ones. That's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, there you go.
I'd like to just add a point
Go ahead,
going back to what you had said before about NIMBYism. I think the terminology is really important. So when you talk about temporary solutions, which play an important role, you know, using that terminology, whether it's bridge bed or interim housing, you know, as opposed to, you know, this idea of, you know, a big emergency shelter type warehouse of folks, right, which scares folks and leads to that kind of concern of NIMBY. And then being able to, I think that's important, being able to show folks how that is a temporary stop or destination that's connected with resources for permanent solutions. You know, whether that's that light touch, you know, helping folks reunify with family, help folks pursue shared housing that can put, you know, their incomes together and make it work on their own in a market unit, or supportive housing, being able to show, you know, this interim housing is a gateway to all of these different resources, and the resources are coordinated and linked. I think, and it may be scattered. So you may have several sites within your community where you provide bridge bed housing or interim housing. No site's too big. And your focus is still on permanent housing. I think those are strategies for getting around the NIMBY concern.
Thank you very much, Keith. This next
I have
one,
a question, if possible.
Marianne, can you wait to the end? Once we answer all the submitted questions, we'll take questions if we have time. Is that okay?
Okay, sure.
Thank you. I apologize. I didn't see your hand up. So the next question, I'm sure a couple of you are going to want to answer it. I'd like to start with Eric on this question, because it says, I hear from our government constantly that funding is not a problem because of COVID. What government funding is available to help South Bend combat this problem? Eric, can you start with that one?
Sure. With the CARES Act, communities got about $4 billion in homeless emergency services grants, $5 billion in community development block grants, and then there was $150 billion in kind of general local relief funds. And so all of those are available for addressing homelessness. Now, the emergency services grants funds are the ones that are most concentrated and most focused on homelessness, and so are the easiest to get access to. Those are available through the continuum of care. The CDBG, Community Development Block Grant dollars, those go through states and cities, and so that's where those ones are coming from. And then the general local relief funds, I don't know exactly how those are being distributed. The other thing is that FEMA, if there are hotels being set up, hotels being reserved for people, they will reimburse 75% of the cost for those hotel beds. As we are trying to get more funding into the HEROES Act, which is pending in Congress right now, they're trying to increase that to 100% match, or not match, but just 100% coverage. So there's a lot of different funding streams that communities have access to, and really the message that we're trying to send is that these are, anything since the beginning of the pandemic is reimbursable. So, you don't have to wait until those dollars filter down from the federal level into your local government. Keep the receipts if you can fund it, and it will be retroactively reimbursable on the back end. The second thing is that these funds can be used for these emergency solutions, but they can also be used for permanent solutions. So in some communities, we've seen, instead of renting out a block of hotel rooms, if a hotel or motel is going under right now, as many are, communities are buying the whole motel, and then they've got those rooms available, and in some communities they're kind of converting them into like efficiency units. And that's going to be a permanent resource available as, bridge housing, affordable housing, whatever you want to call it, that's going to be accessible to the community. So this funding, should be going to get people into individual units as quickly as possible. That's the safest place for them to be. But it can also, people should be thinking, how can we use it not just to solve the immediate problem, but the long-term problem as well.
And I'd like to translate a little bit, and if I'm incorrect, Eric, please correct me. But I think what Eric just said, if you want to put the rubber to the road for the people of South Bend, is your city government, with not even their own money, the extra CDBG-CV funds, that extra money, they could immediately today go out to Dulos Chapel, grab every homeless person, give them all a free hotel room, and have them off the streets in 5 minutes if they chose to. That will cost the city absolutely zero. And if I'm also correct, if they do that, 75% would be reimbursed by FEMA. So imagine how far that money would actually spread if the city could literally end an encampment properly and put them all in a hotel and then service them from there at any time they want with that money. Is that all correct, Eric?
That's the sum of it. And there are on the National Alliance to End Homelessness website, which is endhomelessness.org, you can find resources from service providers in the community. This is how we've been using the dollars. This is how you can most efficiently use the dollars that you have access to from the CARES Act. So those resources are there as well.
Yeah, I think the challenge with these dollars is finding out how to put the streams together to make them work towards, a solution. And that can be difficult because you have different groups involved over the administration. So here in my county, the ESG funds actually pass through our state first before they get to our continuum of care. So we have to work with the state to even get access to those funds, and there's a delay in that. But as you said, you can front the money, but you got to have confidence that that's all going to happen in terms of the reimbursement. The CDBG funds are spread across the entitlement community. So in my county, that's 4 different cities. And then the CRF funds, which are the more general funds, that comes in through a county government. So I think that the challenge is, and I think this is where so important, is having a leader that can spearhead confidence and vision to bring different groups together. The state and the continuum of care, and then the local municipalities, and then of course the county government as well. And that's really, I think, important for being able to figure out how, because they're used to using CDBG, for example, for their existing programs, what they've done before, and that's the natural view is like, okay, so we're gonna set up a rent and mortgage assistance program, not necessarily because that's what we've done before, not necessarily a program that's targeted towards reducing homelessness. And I think to be able to make that shift, you've got to be able to help, bring folks together and show how these pieces can be put together.
And it's sad because this is another example of, like, with all these programs, all these acronyms, all this funding and all, the person that just wants to know, I call, I can get my check. That's where there's a lot of times there's all funding. It sounds all good and all, but it's getting people to say, who do I call? I need it now. That's that outreach, that's that assessment and everything like that. And that's what I don't think communities do a good enough job at. We put so many barriers and hoops and everything like that. The person just says, my rent's due Friday. What do I do? We can't throw acronyms at them.
And I'm a big believer that we have to make things fit around individuals and not programs in generality speaking. And I don't know if you saw me smiling, Keith, as you segued right into my next question so perfectly, talking about a leader. That's exactly what the next question is. Many groups in South Bend claim that we need to have a homeless czar. What is your opinion of this?
Yeah, my thought is that's very important, and someone that can not only speak first from the perspective of those with lived experience and expertise who are experiencing homelessness and what would help them, but then can also bridge the gap to bring other sectors in, and especially these sectors where these dollars are flowing, to put those dollars together. So I think you've got to have a leader that understands homelessness and what people experiencing homelessness need and are going through, but they can also take that knowledge and then bridge that gap with other sectors that don't. And in my view, that leadership should come from your region's continuum of care. And it starts from, getting involved in your continuum of care process and ensuring that you're doing whatever you can to help your continuum of care be as strong as possible, so that leadership's in place to bring everyone together. And that's my thoughts on that.
I will share with everybody in the group. Actually, we're completely out of time and I need to close. And I have some things I need to say before everybody goes. First of all, thank you for spending your time today. Any of the people that you see on the screen, you can ask them any question you want. You have my email address. I'd be happy to give anybody's email address or whatever if you need any information. What we're trying to do, and the reason that we had this call, we don't have an agenda, none of us. And truly, with the situation that the community is in currently, and I'm talking about the number of encampments that you had already. Add to that the fact that rent moratoriums are going to cause major problems once those stop. These people are not going to have their 4 or 5 months worth of rent whenever that happens to be. That is going to cause a huge surge in homelessness. I say to every city right now, you really kind of want to get ahead of that right now. Matter of fact, I'm going to my own county commission to say that exact thing in this next meeting. We got to get ahead of this because we're already behind and we know this problem is going to happen. So let's not pretend surprised. My number one recommendation to every city, not because it's my opinion, because every piece of data I have says this is what cities that are successful do. The 2 things that successful cities do that are always forgotten. Number 1, a good awareness campaign. Look, I don't care what you're trying to do with homelessness. If you don't sell it to the community, if you open a new business without marketing it, it's going to go nowhere. And homelessness is the same way. You have to educate the community and you have to have a leader. I agree with Keith that your first choice should be the continuum of care. But I'm going to be blunt and frank that there are some continuums of care in the United States that may not work out for. Therefore, if that doesn't happen, I think your community is responsible to have a leader because a rudderless ship goes nowhere. And when you have different groups trying to accomplish different things, that's why nothing really gets accomplished. So my 2 things to leave you with are, we're only here to educate you. If you have any other questions, you all have my own phone number. And believe me, I don't want anybody to do anything but use research, measurable outcomes, national best practices. Nothing should be anybody's opinion, because the truth is solving homelessness is not that hard. Getting the political will and getting the right people in place is the hard part. And so if you need any help from here on out, please let us know. I thank you so much for being on our call. And I will be posting this video if you would like to share it with folks once we get it all downloaded and put on YouTube. Thank you to my panelists. Mike, thank you for coming. Keith.
Absolutely.
John Schaefer, Dan McDonald, all of these people, Eric Tars, David and Kelly Long, all of these people came on this call on their own time. They're reliable people. If you need real information, these are the people you need to go to. And if we don't have the specialists here that you need, we all know one. So please try to get your community engaged. I think your community, with a little bit of push, can get over this hump and be very successful. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Hey,
Call your senators.
I feel bad about Mary Ann. If it's important, you need someone, let Tom know. All right, bye-bye.
Yeah, absolutely. If
Thanks.
Mary Ann
Thank
has
you,
a
guys.
question she'd like to get answered.
Okay, hold on. Mary Ann, I will take your question right now because the tape is going to end, but I will happily.
Like, oh.
Yeah, we can stick around.
We can stick around. We're not trying to put anybody off. We were just trying to get through everything. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Mary Ann, or I will.
Okay, can you hear me?
Sure, go ahead.
Hi, so my name is Mary Ann Wilson. I live across the street from the tent city right now, and I've been working with the neighborhood association to try and come up with some solutions to getting these people into a better situation and also helping to restore some security and safety in our neighborhood. And we've talked a lot with Tom about the bridge bed program. And after the bridge bed program closes, is the idea that these would be as needed interventions, like more bridge bed programs would be established whenever there's another critical mass of people? Or is there, and if there's not going to be some kind of low barrier shelter, what is the mechanism for getting people connected to permanent supportive housing?
Yeah, what the way that happened is, and it's funny because the community and the city, they wanted to continue. The problem was I didn't want to continue because what wound up morphing was, we had a goal. That was the goal. It was short. It was focused. And you're going to be able to help people so much. You can guide them and show them. So what happens is I was an advocate for smaller bridge bed programs. The same thing. You can get them off the street that night. That's how we did the veterans program. And yes, I had a pretty good open paycheck. I could get a guy off the bed or off the street that night with an available hotel room. Same thing with bridge bed. Keep it focused. Right now at your tent city or tent cities or whatever it is, if people do not know every single person's name that's there, you need to be able to connect with those people, because guess what? Guarantee you, 35 to 45% of those people that are at your tent city are not homeless people. I've seen it myself. I've seen people come in there and say, hey, we're just trying to help. We're with the faith community. Hey, give me your food stamp card. Hey, let's sell drugs. I've seen prostitutes. I see a county council person come in there and say, I've been here the whole time. No, you haven't, Jason. So you really get to assess, because you start assessing, and I'm a SPDAT guy, but whatever assessment tool that you have, and you start getting to know these people, someone's going to figure out, hey, there's a connection with these people. And if you can get 15 or 20 of them, that you can actually connect, Traveler's Aid is great. I understand the nation of that, but if you don't pick up a phone where they're going and say, is he going to have a place to stay, then you're just shipping homelessness. So I would do small targeted bridge bed programs. But you really want to be able to get in there right now. And I don't care if it's who does it. It doesn't, but you have to be able to find out who these people are, because what you'll do is people will tell on each other and they'll start going, hey, I really want help. And then all of a sudden you're going to find out. And that's why law enforcement gets involved. That's why, he puts a stain on stuff. So target a group of people. So once you get that done and you've targeted those people and you've figured out a mechanism in place, we happen to, like I said, it was 13 days from start to finish. They said, you got 86 beds, figure out something to do with it. Hey, Red Cross, can you let us bum some cots? Okay, great. The community would do that. So once you figure out and start assessing, then you're with law enforcement, because I'm a believer in law enforcement, county, business, everything like that. You come with an end date, because on January 31st, this is ending. So it gives motivation to people to say, okay, what do we have in place?
And that's required for buy-in. And also the other thing that I'd like to say, Mary Ann, is I don't know if you're aware, but when I was there with John Schaefer, we had a homeless problem at that point 2 years ago of about 126 to 128 chronically homeless in the downtown area. So I just want you to think, what would your downtown look like if just 60 people went away? Now, I don't know the current numbers because I haven't been back there, but I'm saying honestly, a bridge bed program should be short-term in duration, 6 months, year tops, even not even, I would go 6 months, but that's going to be up to the person you have run it. The big key is, are you taking people, putting them in there and sending them into permanent housing during that 6 months?
Yeah, I'd like to just add a little bit from my perspective of connecting folks to permanent supportive housing, focusing on that aspect. We took an approach where we started on the back end first. So we knew we were having a problem with rising unsheltered homelessness in our community, especially in our downtown area. And we knew that the resources that were coming in for ending homelessness weren't reaching those folks. So the first thing we wanted to figure out is how can we create new resources for access into permanent housing? And that led to our local housing authority willing to do a set aside of housing choice vouchers for that targeted population. So they're saying we can set aside 60 vouchers. So we then knew, okay, we can get folks, if we have supportive services, we can find other dollars for the services. We can get 60 households housed that we wouldn't have been able to house otherwise. And then we would kind of build our front end approach from those resources. That was the strategy that we took. And then of course that to Mike's point about assessment, really understanding, okay, of those that you're targeting, who really needs a permanent housing voucher and permanent supportive housing versus maybe who just needs kind of that connection to family reunification, really being able to know the difference and who's truly, the most vulnerable, who's been homeless the longest in your community. That's the importance of street outreach. So, but again, if you don't have that connection to those back-end housing resources, you're limited in terms of the impact that you could make. So I guess the approach that I've always taken is let's try to create dedicated new capacity to get folks permanently housed and then kind of right-size the fronting services based on that. And then of course, refer folks that need permanent supportive housing. And then for those that maybe can get by with a market unit with some shared housing or can get reunified with family, help those folks do that, whatever those folks need. But what I've learned doing this is, when you're dealing with an unsheltered population, in many cases, these folks have been unsheltered for many years. A lot of those folks will need permanent supportive housing in some capacity. And it's not a very mobile population. So most of these folks have been homeless in our area for a long time. So we found that, you will be able to connect some to other options, but PSH plays the dominant role in terms of the intervention that's most appropriate.
And I want to talk about what you just said there, Keith, because I'm sure everybody just realized how complex that is. So without a community leader, I hate to go back to that. Who is doing that in your community? Who is trying to figure it from the back end to the front end? The service providers, they have their own jobs. And I in no way want to say anything about the homeless service providers. They're an integral part of what we do. But I'm just saying, who in your community is trying to do these types of things we're talking about? Without a community leader, without somebody honchoing it all, it tends to be a rudderless ship. Did that answer your question, Mary Ann?
It answered a lot. I just ask one more part to it.
Quickly.
Okay, yes. So would you say one of the things that people have been saying as we're trying to come up with solutions is that individuals who are chronically homeless often first need the stability of a roof over their head to then be able to enter into this process of being connected to services fruitfully and transitioned into permanent supportive housing if that's needed or the next step.
That's the best way to do it. I'll let Eric address that in a second, but go ahead. Is that the rest?
Right. Well, no, I was just going to say, so then when the bridge bed program goes away, then what is for the next people who become homeless, or, you know, I don't think then it's wiped out. So is the idea that the street outreach would be enough to still connect people?
No, see, here's what you're trying to do with a bridge bed program. You're trying to knock off a whole bunch quick so that you're not in the situation that you're in. The people, once the bridge bed program's gone, or before the bridge bed program comes in, people should be going through a coordinated entry process, and they should be being evaluated, and they should be on a list, a by name list on who should be housed first. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to work that way in communities. So
if I can jump in real quick now, the way
yeah,
we
go
did
ahead,
it
Mike, go
was
ahead.
it was that targeted. That target was what we called the wall. That was 100 and some people sitting on Beach Street in that encampment. So you need to target that. And by targeting, that's getting to know them, assessing them, getting what's called a therapeutic bond with them, and then hopefully having something in place. You guys are going, I don't know how many you got or whatever like that. We got 86 beds comparative wise to what we did. But once we were able to do and target that, and that was disbanded, okay? You're not going to get everybody, but that was disbanded, but they had a place to go. All right. You also want to make sure that you have some hotels for people that are disabled that they're able to do. In the place that I had, we didn't have the ability to have disabled people. So you might have people with that, might have people with dogs. But once you target that, what we did is we got our 103 that night or whatever. We didn't stop. We did the entire community. So as that was their bed, and as they took care of their place, and they had a place to stay, those beds were based on the SPDAT, the housing thing. And I got all kind of grief for that. It was because they had the highest acuity.
The SPDAT is the assessment tool, Marianne, and the rest of you.
So we got them in there, and then we went out to the whole community. I did over 1,000 SPDATs in the 2-county area. Why? Because it's going to revolve. You're going to get Joe and Mark and Debbie and Sue. They're all you're going to be able to do the turnover where you got to have people to come in. It's not first come, first serve. It's that next person out there that's going to die that has the highest acuity. So that as it goes, that's what happened with us. We went from 2 years before, we had 1,200 street homeless. Then the next year we had 1,000. We started that bridge bed program, I kid you not, in 6 months. And then in 12 months, we went down to 400 people. Daytona Beach didn't all of a sudden start being the not the world's most famous beach. It's because there was this attitude within the community. And like they said, with my veterans program, I got Eddie. Eddie was the first guy out of camp. I got him housed. And I said, Eddie, my outreach people don't know what they're doing. I need your help. I need you to go back to the camp with my people. Now, I was shining him on, sure. But you know what? It gave him value. And he got the next guy. Who got the next guy? Who gets the next guy? And that's how you get a community to go. Target small. Get those people, connect them. You'll be able to weed out the people, the guy out there, hustling money by the highway, he's not a homeless guy. They do that professionally, panhandling. So you get those people, you target it, you clear that out, and then expand it so that everybody knows what's going on, because they all know. And then as you target and get acuity, you'll be able to move those. And by then, hopefully, people will get the idea that housing first only works if you have people, you have somebody that you've targeted, but if you have people that know what they're doing. I see too many housing first programs that fail because somebody's just checking a box. If it's not,
and it is extremely important to do the permanent supportive housing side of permanent supportive housing. Eric, did you have something to say quickly before I take Chris Collins's question?
Yeah, three quick things. One, bridge bed in a congregate setting might be fine in any other time. Right now, that's not what you're looking for.
Not the smartest way. Yeah.
Right. Two, in South Bend, you've got, or I guess just north of South Bend, wherever Notre Dame is, you've got a university that is hurting for funds right now, and they're going to have a lot of empty dorm rooms. That's housing. Find those connections. The city can pay them. They can get reamped. That could be a super quick way to get all those people off the street.
Not just at Notre Dame. I'm sure a lot of hotel owners in downtown South Bend would love to sell a block of rooms. Chris
Exactly.
Collins, did you have a question, sir?
Sorry, the third thing real quick is call your senators, get them to pass the HEROES Act, and that'll give the community a ton more resources to do this good stuff.
Chris Collins, quickly. Hi, Chris.
Hello, everybody. I had a quick question about what does it take to qualify for the CDBG grant money that's available for the 501c3 that's trying to procure some of the money to start a new project, new program to work with the community every day to end the homeless problem?
Eric, can you field that? Because pretty much nothing, right? I mean,
Yeah, so the CDBG dollars go to the city or the county, whatever the jurisdiction is. So you're going to have to get them from there, and I don't know exactly how you do that, but you know, get in touch with Tom. I can get you in touch with people who have done it elsewhere, and they can at least tell you how it worked in their community.
and if I can add to that a little bit, because I do know a little bit about South Bend, and I think there's people that are on the call that have seen these quotes that the South Bend government has clearly said, not just from the mayor's office, but from the council's office, the common council, that money is not the issue. They claim that some people don't want to run the bridge bed program. They don't have anybody to run it, is one of the things that I've read in the media. Here's my point. If the city wants to give CDBG, CV dollars to any nonprofit that is going to take homeless people and house them, they just have to believe in what that nonprofit's going to do. There are no requirements.
I can answer Chris's question if you'd like.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So IHCDA controls that process for the state of Indiana. So if you reach out to them, they have a program that you would have to go through to learn about all the issues, and then it's a competitive process, but that would be how you would get the funding. The current CARES Act funding and CDGB funding is all already allocated and spelled out how it's going to be used on the city's website.
Gotcha. So they've already allocated all their COVID CDBG CV funds.
Yes.
Because are you sure about that, Kelly?
According to the notice that's on their website.
I'd have to check that out. I just know that I've heard in numerous reports that the government has said those monies are available, but they didn't have anybody to run the Salvation Army downtown. So
Just
I'd
remember,
like to.
bridge bed doesn't have to be a building.
Yeah.
We
That's
didn't have
true,
a shelter
too.
or anything with the veterans program. It can be a philosophy. Yeah, if you got funds to be able to get somebody, and you got to be safe with COVID and everything like that. If you get a hotel, if you got the money to get them off the street, and you've got some bridge bed's a philosophy. It doesn't have to be in a box.
That's correct. All right. I appreciate everybody. We've gone 15 minutes over. I'm going to go ahead and end the Zoom call. I would be happy to bring on any expert in any area. So for example, if the reason we had this call tonight is Mr. John Schaefer, who's on the call with us. I've been working with him at Michiana 5 for about 4 years. And it was also the downtown, the Monroe District folks, the folks that live in the neighborhood asked that I do whatever I could do. And we would be happy to do another call with these similar people or with people that you need expertise, because we really want to see South Bend move forward. And I really appreciate everybody being here again. If you have any,
I think that would be a great idea.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry I came in the meeting a little bit late. I thank everyone for being here, and the guests as well as the panelists. But I think this is an ongoing issue that's going to require more talks and more discussions. So if everyone's interested in that, I had a question tonight that one of the persons wanting to attend this meeting could not get in. And they were interested about asking, how do you start a homeless bill of rights in the state of Indiana, but particularly for their city, which is Elkhart. And so there's a lot of things still up for discussion. And when you bring great people together, you can get something accomplished because we learn from each other, and we can kick ideas around. But then after the ideas, you develop a plan. And South Bend needs a plan. And one person can make that happen, or it could be a dozen, but we've got to, continue the discussion mainly. We can't just do it one time and then say, that's it, we tried. Homelessness is a complex problem, and it's going to take further discussion, I feel. South Bend has dealt with tent cities for many, many years. I've seen so many come and go, and they will continue to come and go. And we've got to find a way to end this and help our homeless so they are not living in tents.
Don't forget to ask the homeless what they want before you do anything.
Yes.
You don't want to open a McDonald's in a vegan colony. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think homeless need more input into every discussion that concerns their lives. So we can't make the decisions totally on their behalf.
That is the greatest advice. And on that, I have to tell you, anybody in this room that knows me knows I could talk forever. So normally, when we get on the phone, we're there for hours. I'm not going to do that to you tonight. Thank you for staying, everybody. And if anybody needs anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great night.
Nice to meet you all.
Good night, everyone.